very good evening to all of you. We are ready to start yet another episode of Business Today, your weekly business roundup brought to you exclusively on Channel I. Business world is dynamic and is constantly changing, and we are ready to bring you the latest updates from the local and international market, along with valuable insights from the industry experts. So stay with us as we start off our show with Business Personalities segment. Yes, as the banking sector plays a leading role in the financial market, we hope to meet a veteran banker, a renowned business personality who is leading a leading bank in Sri Lanka. So let's connect with the introduction to welcome our guest for tonight.
Mr. Nanda Fernando, currently the Managing Director of Sampath Bank, is also a Director of SC Securities Limited, which is a subsidiary of Sampath Group. He is also a Director of Lanka Financial Services Bureau Limited, and a Governing Board Director of the Institute of Bankers of Sri Lanka. In his banking career spanning 35 years, he served at Hatton National Bank for almost 6 years, and Sampath Bank from the year of its inception for the past 29 years. During this period he has been responsible for driving multiple aspects of the bank, and has supported transactional banking covering retail and corporate banking, among many other key growth areas. He is a senior fellow member of the Institute of Bankers of Sri Lanka, and holds a Masters of Business Administration specialized in marketing. He is also the past chairman of Bankers Technical Advisory Committee, which functions under the purview of Sri Lanka Banks Association. He is a qualified 4B leader trainer and the past district commissioner of the Sri Lanka Scout Association, and currently functions as the group advisor to the group committee of St. Thomas College, Mount Lavinia. Sampath Bank plc, a public limited liability company incorporated in Sri Lanka, on 10th of March 1986 under the Companies Act No. 17 of 1982, and listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange. A licensed commercial bank under the Banking Act No. 30 of 1988, re-registered on 28th of April 2008 under the Companies Act No. 7 of 2007. Sampath Bank's vision: the growing force in Sri Lankan financial services. Sampath Bank's values: create a learning culture that promotes individual and organizational development, as well as promoting innovation and value for customers. Treat all internal and external customers the way we would like to be treated. Encourage and promote teamwork in all aspects of behavior. Open to feedback and demonstrate an eagerness for personal development. Monitor and demonstrate an impressive commitment to results. Uncompromising ethical and professional standards of behavior.
Yes, and that is Mr. Nanda Fernando, Managing Director of Sampath Bank, joining us today. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
Right. You were appointed as the Managing Director of Sampath Bank 6 months ago. And that was a time when the company was doing brilliantly well. So taking up such a position when an organization is at its peak and continuing to grow from there is quite a challenge. How did you take this challenge?
Well, Nisanga, the position per se was really not a challenge for me, because I have been with the bank for almost 30 years. I know our staff pretty well.
Since its inception.
And I know the culture of the bank, the customer base, most of them, the shareholders. So basically working with this well-known culture, well-known team itself was a privilege more than a challenge. So this is an opportunity for me to serve the mankind, the Sri Lankan community as a national bank, and it was really something that I looked forward and a privilege really.
All right. So there was a minimum capital rate, requirement that was introduced for all banks as per the recent budget. So how did this move affect Sampath Bank, and where do you stand in terms of capital adequacy compared to the rest of the banks?
Right now it is not an issue for us. The Sampath Bank is well ahead of the requirements currently. But with Basel requirements coming in 2018, we have got to increase capital, and accordingly our board has taken the necessary action to increase capital as and when required, and we are ready for it. And I am sure when the time comes, we would raise such capital to meet the requirements, and we are very confident and comfortable on meeting such requirements.
All right. So if you look at the banking industry, the interest rates have been, for the last 2 years, it has been climbing up to 16 to 17% and so on. So in such a situation, where do you think the interest rates are moving towards? Is there any possibility that the rates can go further up?
Interest rates keep on moving according to two factors. One is the local conditions, and the other is the global conditions. Say around the mid 2000, towards the late 2015 and 2016, there were excessive credit growth, where the government stepped in at the proper time and brought measures to curtail the excessive credit growth. So right now the government, the credit growth is in line with the thinking of the government, and the rates have almost come to the peak, and therefore we do not see the rates climbing far ahead than what it is today. So probably a few basis points may change, but as long as the credit growth is controlled, the rates may not have a very wider fluctuation in time to come.
Hopefully.
Yes.
So since we were talking about rates, financial market is quite rate sensitive, quite rate sensitive. So we see severe competition in the industry in terms of rates. So what is your strategy to tackle this situation?
Well, the requirement to change rates, as I told before, would depend on many situations, locally as well as globally. When the strategy of the bank is to aggressively grow the advances, we would require the funds to meet such requirements, and depending on the liquidity of the bank, Sampath Bank, other banks, the banks are required to raise funds. So depending on such needs, the strategy of the banks change their policies and increase rates and decrease, do both. So we also do it such, we also adjust our rates accordingly, and currently the rates are sort of at a fairly high situation, and we don't think that the rates will increase very much more than what it is currently.
All right. What is the current position of market liquidity?
Liquidity is not great. In fact, the government step into either tighten liquidity or to mop up liquidity as and when it required. So currently there is not much, to an extent where there is not a huge excess in the market, and accordingly the demand for funds are there. We see all banks offering fairly high rates to attract the deposits, because they have to be meet in the requirements for lending as well. So currently there isn't a very high and excess liquidity. but banks keep on changing the rates to meet their strategy and depending on the liquidity in the market.
All right. Regarding the senior citizen segment, there was government intervention to support them through various benefits, better rates and so on. So how has Sampath Bank got involved in this to support this cause, and what are the products in your portfolio for senior citizens?
Well, we do have mainly a category called the Sampath Sanhinda, which is targeted at the senior citizens. Years ago, senior citizens were viewed as people, the old, the retiree, and those who would want to
enjoy the pension,
the pensions, and that sort of a category. But things are changing now. People are even commencing businesses, continuing their employment even after 55.
They seem to be more active after 55.
Yes. So due to this, there is a lot of activity within these people who are matured, who are knowledgeable. They even go into online banking currently. So there is a lot of activity taking place, and we think it's our duty to get involved in the economic activities as a national policy and get involved with the senior citizens as well. And we continue to offer special privileges, even medical facilities, medical vouchers for those who maintain the balances at required levels. And there is a lot of activity going on with senior citizens.
Great. So while going through your financials, we saw very impressive fee-based income rate. Usually in such a situation, the customers get negatively affected. But in your situation, how did you strike a balance between protecting your customers' interest while maintaining high fee-based income?
Yes, now fee-based income is one of the major revenue generation areas in a bank's profit and loss account. Well, apart from fund-based activities, fees are charged for fee-based related facilities extended, but we ensure that whenever we introduce a fee, that our customers get a value added through the facilities what we offer, for which these fees are levied. So it is definitely not the fees are charged with a view to cover our operating expenses and the maintenance incurred to provide such facilities. So therefore, we do not charge excessive fees from our customers, but we ensure that we provide a good value for the type of services what we offer, and so that making their life, making their banking more convenient. Rather than coming into a bank, we have a lot of facilities where they can do their banking from home through the internet banking, online banking. So if we are to develop all this, we need to have infrastructure being built up for that, and there is a cost. So but definitely we believe that the fees charged on online banking are very much lesser than what we would have to charge in the event they have to come into our branches and make use of such facilities.
Okay, since we were talking about fees, there was a recent incident regarding the SMS banking fee that you introduced. What was the cause and how did you handle that situation?
Well, this was basically due to the mobile charges, the SMS charges being increased by the mobile network operators due to certain taxes introduced. These charges were in the region of about 30 cents per SMS, which increased to about 70 cents, 71 cents really. So it was almost double of it. And therefore, we do provide a service of providing a SMS message to each and every transaction a customer does with the bank. So really we were offering this service totally free of charge, but due to this increase, this cost doubling or even more than doubling,
there was significant impact.
And therefore we had to impose a charge for those transacting for more than 10. So up to 10 text messages were free, and beyond 10 there was a charge. In fact, this charge really applied to only 20% of the customer base to whom the SMSs were going. So for 80% it was not been affected at all, because they were within the first 10. There are some customers to whom about 1,300 SMSs go for a month. So this is a huge cost which the bank cannot bear. So therefore we were very transparent. We told this to our customers that up to 10 it is free. So for 80% this was not affected. So there was a bit of a reaction from a few segment for about a week or so. But once they understood this, now our credit card transactions are totally free. So once they understood, they really settled down with it, and so therefore people understand this, and right now there is no major fuss over it.
Okay, so we spoke about internet banking, SMS banking, and now the next question is also linked with that the technology and innovation, because Sampath Bank is well known for its technology, and in fact you introduced the ATM network, the online banking, all that to Sri Lanka. So how do you keep in line with the new technology, with the technology and innovations in the banking industry?
Yes, Nisanga, as you know, the Sampath Bank, when it commenced in 1987, we created a revolutionary change in the industry. As a result of it, the entire industry changed. Now, if you see, when the bank started 30 years ago, a cloud was a condensed water vapor in the sky. 4G was an address in a flat. 20 years later, if you see, and today these names represent world-class companies who have really changed the industry. And with fintechs coming into the banking to provide some of the banking facilities through the mobile technology, the entire industry have changed. So like how we changed the industry in 1987, we would want to be the change trendsetter in the industry, and we continue to provide innovative changes over the period. So even currently we have several products which are lined up to be introduced as and when required. So we keep on introducing this. If you see, about 2 months ago, we introduced 10 digital products. So we are now in the process of going into digitalization in a large scale, so that the people in this country would benefit through the online banking, which is lesser costly for them, more convenient for them, with a lot of value added. So we are in the process. We have a very strong IT team who are really capable and dynamic. So we are committed to continuously introduce this new technology, new innovation, with a view to make the life of customers more convenient and add value.
Right, and you have been winning several key awards in banking industry, like Best Bank, Most Innovative Bank, and so on for the past so many years. And winning is difficult, but continuing to win is a much more difficult task. So how do you maintain this position?
Well, as I told you, due to continuous improvement that we have and the very dedicated staff we have. So most of our staff compared to the other banks are young. Well, I would say we have a very knowledgeable staff force who the commitment level is very high. We do not have attendance system over the last 30 years. None of us sign registers in and out. So we though
The
there
whole
is
bank?
Whole bank. None of us over the last 30 days have been signing attendance registers.
Was it something that was introduced recently, or
It was applied from the day one.
Okay.
This is the culture we have. So we have a great team. Our board of directors are very involved. There is a very balanced with various a balanced knowledge hub over there. So they give very good direction to us, and together with our team who are really committed, we have been performing continuously and consistently, which have been bringing all these awards. If you see the Euromoney, the Banker, the Best Bank Award among the top corporate citizens. So all these, though we have not been really working towards this, these have been coming to us on the way. So it is in a way encouraging to have all this, and when you continue to perform, I believe this would come along in the usual course of business.
Great. So customer service is the key selling point in any service organization. It is definitely the key differentiator. So how customer centric are you, and are you satisfied with the service levels of the bank?
Well, yes, we are satisfied, because we view the customer as the most important person with whom we should interact, because we have come into this position because of our customers who have been patronizing us for over the last 30 years. So customer is the primary focus of all our staff. We continue to improve customer service through when the customer call over to us, or maybe through the online banking, or maybe through providing certain delivery channels which the customers could patronize 24/7 over the 365 days. So there are continuous training that we have both locally and internationally as well. So we want to expose our staff to these training programs, so that they understand the importance of customer service, because without customers we would not be in business. And something that we really believe always is we should discharge and deliver the customer expectations at the time the customer really want it. If somebody asks for a loan, we have to grant the loan when the customer is in need of it.
Definitely.
So if we take more time and grant the loan once the customer has finished his need, then it's meaningless. So we ensure that we very consciously we are very sensitive towards customer criticism as well, and we try our level best to keep on improving with a view to add value to our customer service.
All right, and something very interesting in your profile is that you have been with the bank since its inception for the last 29 years. So you have been through its good times and bad times and every milestone. So can we talk about its journey and its key milestones to come to this position today?
Yes, in the 87, group of visionaries led by our late founder chairman, Mr. N.U. Javadana, commenced this bank, and from the day one it was a fully automated bank, which we introduced three major changes. We introduced online banking, then we introduced an ATM network, we introduced automated teller machines. At a time, if you see the banking at that time, when a customer comes to encash a check, there was a token given and the customer has to wait. Probably, I'm not sure whether you have experienced that 30 years ago. Maybe they had to wait for half an hour or sometimes even more. So it is Sampath Bank who changed this system, and as the customer came onto the counter, we immediately through the technology encashed the check without keeping the customer waiting for the half an hour or so which happened previously. So that was the start. So with that start, we with the extended banking hours, banks were closing at that time on Mondays at 1 and the other weekdays at 1:30. But we extended our banking hours till 3 o'clock, and subsequently about 10 years ago we introduced our super branches, which are open 365 days, and in all our super branches are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Apart from that, our Colombo Super is open from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m.
Okay.
So that is 365 days, and we have automated channels, then the ATM networks. So a lot of opportunity for the customers, and very recently we have changed our business model to ensure that apart from the brick and mortar branches, there is a new introduction which probably will come in about 2 weeks time to serve the unbanked and the underbanked. So therefore we hope to go into areas where the banking facilities are not available to the people, and we would want to ensure that each Sri Lankan has a bank account, so that will be the foundation to their commencement of business activity and will help them to reach the next level.
Right. So we really hope we had more time, but unfortunately we got to wind up. Thank you very much, Mr. Fernando, for joining us today. We really appreciate your presence.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you very much for inviting Sampath Bank.
All right. With that, we got to take a short commercial break, and we will be back with you soon. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Business Today. As we are moving on to our final discussion for today, let's connect with the stock market segment. Yes, we hope to get into a discussion on a sector that affects the well-being of Sri Lankans, or rather everyone, and that is the healthcare system. And we have with us Mr. Raghuram Ramakrishnan, a senior analyst from NDB Securities, joining us. A very good evening to you.
It's been a pleasure to be here.
Yes, let's start the conversation by giving an overall picture of the current healthcare system in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, when it comes to a healthcare system in Sri Lanka, the public sector has been in the forefront since 1930s. Sri Lanka adopts a free healthcare model since 1930s, and as far as our healthcare system efficiency is concerned, and Sri Lanka has achieved several remarkable landmark achievement in compared to regional peers and almost in par with the developed countries. WHO, World Health Organization, have few indicators such as child mortality rate, maternal mortality rate, prevalence rate of HIV and TB. If you actually looked at child mortality rate in Sri Lanka in 1990, it was around 18 and it has dropped to 8 in 2012. Similarly, if you take maternal mortality rate from 85 in 1990, it has dropped to 39. So Sri Lanka has achieved this remarkable healthcare system. Mainly, I would like to attribute the fact the government's continuous effort in providing free healthcare as well as free education. If you actually look at the overall spending of the government over the last 15 years, which has recorded the 15-year compound annual growth rate of 13.7, whereas the spending on the education at the rate of 15.4 and the spending on the healthcare has been at 14.7. So I would like to attribute this immense success in healthcare efficiency to the government's continuous effort in providing healthcare, free healthcare as well as free education.
Okay, if you look at from the investor's perspective, do private sector listed hospitals look attractive for investments?
It is. If you actually look from healthcare index, since January 2009, the healthcare index has been growing. I mean, it always been in the growth trajectory, even though it hasn't outperformed the overall ASPA until end of 2015. From 2015, the healthcare index started to outperform overall index, mainly due to two reasons. The one reason is there were a few talks that the government is looking to diversify Lanka Hospitals holding, and as well as a TBG US based fund getting into one of the private hospitals. But if you look from investors' point of view, especially foreign investors' point of view, the Sri Lanka's healthcare stocks are really attractive if you compare with Asia, developed Asia, emerging, and the global. So on that regard, I feel the healthcare index or healthcare sector in Sri Lanka for the stock market investors is still look attractive. And then again, but investors should have to do their own homework, and they have to check each financials and do their own homework beforehand they invest in. But overall, if you look from the global point of view or the foreign investors' point of view, Sri Lanka look attractive for investment purposes.
Okay, if you look at the supply chain, do we have adequate resources to manage the demand in the healthcare sector? What are supply constraints?
Yeah, so the demand side, almost all the critic about the healthcare sector would agree the demand for healthcare sector is immense in Sri Lanka, mainly be driven by non-communicable disease, aging population, and increasing per capita income. But if you look at the supply side, about 90% of the infrastructure in the healthcare sector is still within the government segment. And unfortunately, government is not in the position to prop up their spending on the healthcare expenditure because they have various other front to look into, and they have fiscal constraints. So going forward, with the demand being created, the private sector has to fill the gap. And with overall government management or the regulatory in place, we feel like the private sector will have to play the major role by spending on capital formation. So there is immense of demand will be created, but then again there is a bit of supply constraint, and we hope the private sector would fill the gap.
Okay, you mentioned about non-communicable diseases, NCDs. What are the measures taken to curtail NCDs which will support the control of public expenditure?
Non-communicable diseases, as the name implies, is also known as chronic disease. So it tend to last longer and take very slow way in progression, and sometimes it will last until the patient die. Globally, the NCDs related death is about 38 million, which is roughly around 80% of the overall death, and nearly 50% of the death is happening through cardiovascular, followed by cancers, respiratory diseases, and diabetics. In Sri Lanka also reflect the similar trend with in 2015 roughly 75.2% of the death is happening through NCDs, and out of which 40% attributable towards cardiovascular. So going forward, we expect the non-communicable disease pattern would continue, mainly due to the lifestyle of Sri Lankan, especially urbanization, aging population, and increasing per capita income has resulted in sedentary lifestyles among Sri Lankans. But as far as the measurement being taken, the government is in the right place, and in their annual report that they have mentioned from 2014 to 2020, they have plans to come up with new equipment, especially the screening, because non-communicable disease is the one how you can identify is through screening. So government has planned and have identified few hospitals to fix few X-ray machines, CT scan, and MRI scan. So the government has done the preventive measures in order to allocate capital towards the diagnostic services, but we also feel the private sector also plays their role in order to battle the non-communicable disease as a whole unit.
All right, and we see a rising trend in the aging population in Sri Lanka. So what are your thoughts on that and the impact on the healthcare sector?
Aging population is the second largest demand driver going forward in Sri Lanka. Not only in Sri Lanka, but almost major countries, including Japan and European countries, are facing this issue. The aging populations is mainly happening due to two reasons. One is decline in total fertility rate. Total fertility rate is defined as number of birth a woman can give before she turns 50. In Sri Lanka, if you actually looked at in 1945, the TFR was 5 and it had come down to 2.5 in 2015. The life expectancy rate is increasing, and that has resulted in the median population among Sri Lankan is to increase. Back in 1945, median population of Sri Lankan was around 23 and it has become 30 in 2015. The aging population not only gives the issues in the healthcare sector, but also it will have some impact on the economic front. If you take economic growth is mainly driven by three factors. One is labor, capital, and total factor productivity. Okay. So when the aging population increases and you don't have enough labor supply, particular country would face economic growth stagnant. So we are in the situation, our aging population is increasing. Back in 2012, we had about 12.4% as 60 plus population, and now we expect that to go up to 16.1 in 2021. So government will have to face these issues, and they'll have to allocate more resource towards geriatric care, as well as government have to look to other mode how they can prop up the economic growth. But what they can do is they can draw parallel, or they can get a few ideas from European countries and especially Japan. When you take Japan, Japan has the largest aging population in entire world. It's about roughly 20%. How do they tackle that? Is in 1961 itself, they have introduced a mandatory insurance scheme for every citizen. And from 2001, they have made it mandatory for everyone to have a long-term insurance plan. When you have long-term insurance plan, and from the moment you are no longer economically active, then government will look after you. And they also have few plans called Angel Scheme. What the scheme is, they have incentivized to have more children, as well as they have encouraged women force to take part in the labor force. So government can take few parallels, and they can introduce few insurance scheme going forward in order to tackle this aging population effectively going forward.
Okay, in your view, a very brief answer I'm expecting from you. What measures should be taken to strengthen the public healthcare system in Sri Lanka? Very brief answer.
Yes, I would like to say government has to introduce, with all parties being included, they have to introduce a proper insurance scheme in place. As one you see in Japan, it's a government-sponsored insurance scheme. In Singapore, employer-sponsored insurance scheme. And in UK, again, NHS is again a taxation-sponsored insurance scheme. So I would expect the government is right now in the track, or right now in the need of the hour, to introduce a proper insurance scheme in order to make sure every particular citizen in the country will have safe access towards the healthcare facilities in the country.
All right. Thank you very much, Raghu, for joining us.
Thanks
and
a lot.
With that, yes?
It's been a pleasure to discuss about the most promising sector in the country, the healthcare, and thanks a lot for inviting me to have a discussion on this sector. Thanks a lot.
Definitely, and we really appreciate your presence here. And with that, we are ready to wind up for today. And thank you for being with us. We will see you next week, same time on Channel I. Until then, take care and good night.